Well, this trip was arranged because Barbados was announced that it becoming a republic, and Prince Charles was invited to be there for that moment when that happened. Barbados is remaining a member of the Commonwealth of 54 countries, despite no longer being a Commonwealth realm. And that's something that both countries, I think, have been very keen to emphasise those continued ties. During the ceremony, Charles made a very significant speech, a very landmark speech, partly because he was delivering it at such a landmark moment, but also because of the fact that he directly addressed slavery in Britain's colonial past. And this hasn't come up in a speech by a member of the royal family in the Caribbean before, despite multiple visits over the years to the region. It wasn't an apology, and which is what some are calling for, and some are also calling for reparations for slavery, because of course the impact of that regime for so many decades still looms large for inequalities today. Barbados' Prime Minister has previously spoken about reparations. She's previously said there should be an apology and there should be a plan for funding to come from countries who benefited from slavery to redress the imbalance, and that was about justice. Those conversations were not had by dignitaries publicly, but certainly this is very much an ongoing conversation. The mood of the trip was, it was so interesting. And I think what was so fascinating about it, and it was at times it was very somber, and at times it was very celebratory, but what made it such a unique sort of royal visit, if you like, is because throughout the visit, Charles's status, totally transformed halfway through the visit. So he arrived, and he was technically at the time future head of state in the country. And obviously, we knew that was going to be overturned. But he arrived as a prince of the realm, and was afforded all the formal welcomes of that role. And then by the time he left, he was. He had no formal role within Barbados, and he was a visiting dignitary, effectively. And so it was really fascinating to sort of see that, and you could that was played out really visually throughout the ceremony. It was very tangible, and so you had him at the service arriving last, the most important dignitary. He arrived last, and then there was this final salute to the monarchy, and he sat on this sort of chair in the middle of the throne, if you like, and you had this incredible symbolism of the royal standard flag being lowered and then actually folded away right in front of us. That absolutely marked the end of the Queen being head of state there, and then the presidential standard was raised. And the new president, Dame Sandra Mason, she sat on the chair that Prince Charles had previously sat on, and she delivered her speech. And at the end of the service, when everyone left, she was standing at the front, she was there, and Charles was behind her and left after her. So you saw played out this really clear visual of the status that he had at the start of his visit, at the start of the handover ceremony, and then the status that he had at the end, and how different those were. It is a very big moment for Barbados, but also it does have significance globally as well, because there are now 14 countries outside of the UK, so 15 in total, that still have the Queen as head of state. And there have been questions raised with Barbados making this move, the first country to do so in such a long time, as to whether or not this will now have a kind of ripple effect, and whether other countries who have the Queen as head of state will now decide to press on and make their own changes as well.
Victoria Murphy there. Let's bring our panel in back now. Charlotte, it was all smiles, but you can imagine for the royals, after 400 years of history, must have hurt a little bit.
Yeah, the Queen was so gracious, sending very warm congratulations, very good turn of phrase there, congratulating them on freeing themselves from her. But it probably hurt a bit. But I think it's really important to the Queen that they're still going to be part of the Commonwealth, and that's really what really matters to her the most. It's time, I suppose. She understands that. She's a wise woman.
Do you think this might have some sort of domino effect, Richard? Is this a victory for people who campaign against the royal family?
Well, I certainly saw the organisation Republic trying to make the most of it, hoping it will be, as you say, a domino effect. But I'm not sure. I mean, every country's got their own politics and an agenda about this sort of thing, and the Commonwealth is what's mattered to the Queen since many countries gained their independence, and it's all about being a warm, friendly family of nations. So I think they just accept that changes are inevitable.
This is the first one since 1992, though, so it was a pretty slow domino effect, if it is a domino effect.
Yeah, but Charlotte, we saw the videos of Charles appearing to have a bit of a noddy moment, a bit of fall asleep during a ceremony. And we talk about not overloading the Queen, but Charles has been around the world at quite some speed lately. Do we need to be careful about not ruining his health as well.
Well, he is 73, but it was 3:30 a.m. in the UK when he nodded off in Barbados. And yeah, he is working really hard, but this is what he's been building up to his whole life. 73 is no great age in this in this day and age.
Not for a royal.
I don't think we need to worry about overloading him. I mean, this is his chance to shine. He's been waiting 73 years for it. He'll be fine. He'll be fine. It was 3:30 a.m. I mean, I'm an ex-3 a.m. girl. You're still a 3 a.m. person.
Come on, we're still going at 3:30 a.m.
It's late.
Yeah.
It's late.
Actually, they're 25. It's just the jobs they do. But Richard, what did you make about these comments about slavery?
I thought it was a really brave speech by Prince Charles. I mean, to my knowledge, it's the first time that a royal family member's made a big speech that discusses slavery. And, you know, you've got to come from the perspective that the history of the royal family is tied up with slavery. You know, one of Prince Charles's ancestors, James II, was the head of the Royal Africa Company, which was the company which oversaw the biggest transfer of slaves from Africa to the Americas of any company in the world. You know, so they benefited from that in the same way that most aristocrats in Britain did. It's just part of our history. But history is what it is, and you know, he wanted to address that in a serious way, and in a way that's sympathetic. But then it's politically is very contentious because, you know, there are calls for reparations, there are calls for apologies, which is a whole complex matter, really.
That's all we have time for in our YouTube version of the show. For more royal news, views and videos, head over to Mail Plus. The link is on your screen now.